it's going to be pretty much the same.
Pretty much the same.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty much the same. I mean, look, the stuff that we're going to be working on, because ICT started doing the World Bank stuff at the moment, and that's mainly bridges. So there's no roads, there's no real roads happening.
Like I know there's some World Bank projects for the expansion of the Lela Causeway in Detroit.
So the actual Lela Causeway?
Yeah.
That's RCT. Yeah, so it's a different design team completely. But even that, I have seen those designs, and they're pretty much just raising the causeway and putting asphalt surfacing over the top, from what I can see. So the main work there is going to be not widening and making those culverts bigger, cleaning up the culverts and putting additional crossings in. So, so it doesn't really affect what we're doing. I mean, the only real structure we're doing is Gangway Bridge on ADB. When I say we, I'm an ADB. The only real structure is Gangway Bridge, which is in the act.
I'm just wondering, because it'll make a lot of sense if a lot of the materials will work for both projects.
No, I hear what you're saying. It is an asphalt surface that's going over the top, and our road is asphalt. The Lady Causeway to topple. The only grey area there is the meeting point outside the bank. Because they've designed that, and that's going to extend to our road on the 80%.
Yeah, because there'll be an elevation issue, right? If they're going to raise the causeway, because right now, I mean, it's pretty much level.
Yeah, what happens is come off the causeway, it actually dips down. We've got ponding that happens at FSM Bank on the corner. So, and several years ago, I think it was the Taiwanese, or the Koreans, the Japanese, and it was the Asians resurfaced from that intersection, but it kind of starts just before the bridge, and then you suddenly got the surfacing that's running, and then this side of the bridge, it's already going over the causeway. So they do need to raise it a bit, and they're going to need to tie it into the intersection. And I have a personal bugbear when you raise a causeway and you come off the causeway down into a low scale, that's the point. So, and I know there was huge pushback from the community on raising the causeway in the first place, because it just makes everything on the other side inaccessible. So, I reckon they work.
So it's raising and widening?
Don't even know why.
Just raising.
Yeah. Because the tow line's going to run away from you if that's not widening.
The drawing that shows it's widening as well as
on maybe. Yeah. Is it okay?
A little bit.
Not here.
Yeah, it was last week. Shankara.
Oh, Shankara showed you. Yeah. Oh, really? So they're going to widen that as well? Wow. But if they widen that, they can't widen that into the ocean side because you've got that hole there.
So that's why I asked, but yes, it's widened to the ocean side.
Well, you're just going to keep filling it.
That's why I asked. I think there's a swim platform there, so there's.
There is that concrete swim platform that goes out.
Probably take that out and widen. There's a certain amount of reef before you get to the hole.
Okay, is there? Kind of that's going to destroy it because if you put anything on there that's load bearing, it's going to snap off. I mean, also you've got that pipeline that goes out to the next hole on the other side. That's coming from the prawn factory. Yeah, what is it called?
It's a clam farm.
Clam farm. Yeah, you've got that go straight out into the deep hole on the other side. So yeah, anyway, look, it's World Bank, it's ICT. I know that they're nowhere near as close to finished as what we are. That's the urgent. What's it called? What do you say?
Urgent climate resilience.
Urgent climate resilience. Yeah, so that's still done another couple of months away. So yeah, to answer your question, I know the materials aren't going to change because there is not that much choice of materials that you can get out here. But the design, I don't know. I don't have the, it's not mine. It's not under us. It's a good question though. We've made quite a few discussions and changes over the weekend because you guys commented, so we're going to cover all of that now this morning. I think you'll be very happy with where this is going. And yeah, I'm just thinking, shall we start?
Yeah, we should, and just start using the mic, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm going to officially start it, and then we can tackle all the questions. Okay. Right, I'm live. Where's Sergey?
Good morning, everybody. So this is day number 3 on the capacity. Mic's on. I've just turned it down slightly. Yeah, otherwise I get feedback. Can everybody hear me? I think online it's not a problem because it goes directly through into the online. Is that correct, guys? Kenneth? This goes directly into the online. Okay, so they're not listening to me through the speaker. Okay, fantastic. So, welcome to day number 3, Construction Industry Capacity Building Workshop, Micronesia. What we're going to do this morning is just over the next half an hour to 45 minutes, tackle the questions that came online last week, and any further questions that we need to clear up from last week, and then we'll get into the, sure. Caroline, did you want to step outside as well? Then we won't have any DTCI representation or SMEC representation in the room. Just kidding. Sorry. Thanks, Peter. So we'll tackle the questions from last week and any additional questions to close off last week's sessions. Also, we've got some fairly exciting news for you guys with regards what's come out of the comments that came from last week's sessions, which I think you're going to be happy with. It does require some changes, but I think you're going to be happy with that. Yeah. Can you not hear? That there. Oh, okay. Can they hear now? Just check. All good? Still not. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Let's see. Right. Okay, fantastic. It's just otherwise that's just going to start screaming at us if we turn it up anymore. Okay, let's get straight into it. So as per the online comments that came through, let's start with Ronald Sue. Yes, he can speak louder. Okay. Nothing there that needs to be dealt with. Right, will the presentations be posted on the FSTMC and I website? Yes, the presentations will be posted, so you don't need to take too many notes if you don't want to. They will be posted, and any notices or, well, Peter, just a question. I'm assuming we're going to be putting any sort of comments. We'll put that officially onto the website as well. So anything that needs answering that's come out of this meeting will be put onto the website. Okay, fantastic. So everybody has access to the same info. Right. K1 Leilu Causeway to Toffel Road. The speaker mentioned using the native material. Please confirm the subbase is native material. Yes, the subbase is native material. All right. Kapwa East Sau Road. If the subbase is intended to reuse from the existing road, please specify on the drawing details. This will be easier to bid. They are specified on the drawing details. It's quite clearly the same cross-section that all the other roads on the rehabilitation side, as I went through on the slides last week. The only difference being the section where it is slumped, where we're putting concrete in. And there you're going to need to fill, so we're going to use the existing material that is there, rework it, put it as a sub-base, and then we're going to bring material in, but I am fairly certain that that is a coral-based material that you can get in Pompeii. So you're not going to need to float that in from offshore, and then that's going to fill it, and then we're going to start with the, as a base layer, and then we're going to start with the layer works above that. So, Peter. Yeah. Sure.
So this is just further to that question there about reusing the existing road, the detail on the drawings. Just want to emphasise a point. Don't just look at drawings to get your information. You must look at the BOQ and understand how that works, along with the specification and the drawings. They all collectively need to go together. You need to understand the information from all sources of technical information to understand what's being asked for. And if you find that something is still not clear, then that's a good reason to raise an RFI, basically, to seek clarification on something. Hey.
Brilliant. Thanks, Peter. Okay, I'm just going to do this. Right, next question is, if the subbase can be manufactured on the islands, does the government have sites for mining the native material so contractors can produce subbase material on the islands. Well, no. In Pohnpei State, that I think is possible. I think there is enough material in Pohnpei State that you don't need to bring material in. In Kojirai, I don't think there is a small amount of material that needs to be brought in for the section of concrete, but otherwise we're reworking what's there. For YAP, you're going to need to bring material in. Definitely going to need to bring material in. There isn't enough material in state to service the Ganya Bridge or the 2 roads, from what I understand. And in Chuk, again, you're going to need to bring material in. Yeah. There. Hang on. Can I?
So with Kosrai, the existing material probably will not meet spec. So when you say reworking the material and putting it back, are you putting it back as a sub-base, or are you intending that to be the permanent works? Because the material that's used to make the roads now are probably not going to meet specification.
Yeah, so the idea, making it possible to reuse material, yes, you can consider its reuse in the permanent works. The pavement design has allowed for that factor within it. So if we're saying that reusing existing material is okay, and it will be, say, restricted to, let's say, sub-base, and not necessarily in a base course layer, then it is acceptable to do. At the end of the day, your benchmarks will be, as well as making sure you get your densities right, the CBRs, all right? So there's been an assumed set, it might be 3% for something, so as long as you achieve that minimum requirement, then that's fine. If you find any areas that are below that kind of benchmark, don't forget there's always going to be an engineer as well, then you inspect that together and you decide what to do. It may require digging out a section, replacing it with better material, or doing some alternative of treatment. So there will be that kind of site-specific application of changes is going through. But the important thing at the moment is the price according to what's in the bid document. And it's a measure and value contract, like these all typically are, so things will change, and it can be accommodated within the construction supervision cycle to do that. Does that answer your question?
I think so, but just to make sure it's clear. So if the existing material that's dug up and
it's supposed to be reused for asphalt fails to meet the quality of the aggregate required per the specifications, that imported material will then be switched to. Because the aggregate in Kosrai is soft.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's still based on an outcome as a benchmark. So certainly the idea would be, I think you'd learn a lot in the initial stages of what you're doing, and that will set a precedence for what's going to happen for the rest of the project. But look, if there's something fundamental that's not actually reflected in the current contract, then there's ways to deal with that, in the conditions of contract anyway. But the principle of it, there has been geotechnical investigations done, so we know what material is in there. A pavement design has been done, and this has come up as a suitable solution. So I wouldn't be worrying about that stuff now, basically, is what I'm saying. Yeah.
okay, thanks.
Thanks a lot. And the bill of quantities is fairly clear what's imported material and what's not imported material and what's going to be reused. So just price according, if you take a look at the bill of quantities, price that, and like Peter says, if the rates, it is a rate-based contract, so put your rates in, and if we do need to import more material, you will get, it's not a lump sum, you will get paid for it. So
I'll just clarify a bit more on the reuse material. Like we would definitely not be looking at reusing aggregate for the asphalt.
yeah,
All right, that needs to be good, top quality material. Same with the base course, granular base course layer.
yeah,
We do this quite often in projects around the Pacific Islands. Encourage reuse of material, but it's relative to where it sits within the pavement profile. So for your subgrade layers, your earthworks, it's fine. For your sub-base, you know, where it's sort of 80% kind of thing that you're aiming for. But when you get in your top layers, no. Look at using top quality material for all those things.
Yeah. And COSRA is a bit of a difficult one, primarily because you've got two things happening. You've got rehabilitation and reconstruction. So, yeah. Okay. Is everybody happy with that? Clear on that lot? Okay, moving on. All right. For Chook projects, can the PMO set up a contingent bid item for a policeman on site? Okay, there are contingencies allowed in the bill of quantities. I didn't necessarily specifically put police officer into the bill of quantities. Is that a standard thing in the States? I mean, I know it's something which we apply in Papua New Guinea and the Highlands for very good reason, but even there they exclude it in your price if you don't feel comfortable and supply your own security. You know, you will be definitely given all of the authorities. Olivia's here, so Olivia, you can back me up on this. I mean, before construction starts, everything will be in place, that you'll have the permissions in place, and the police will definitely assist with traffic management. But that's we're not going to give you a police officer for your site. I don't think that's something that's standard. So, moving on. Is it possible to see the slides? I can see them. Right, Yap Ganya Bridge for EPA permit. Olivia, I see you did jump in on this one. May I ask you to just answer this question? So, it is my understanding, maybe you can just pass him the mic. Olivia, it's my understanding that we need an EPA certificate. We do not need an NDPES permit because we aren't actually in America, we are in Micronesia. Is that correct?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you. Martin, that is correct. Okay. Although, as you know, the Environmental Protection Agencies and FSM do follow the U.S. generally the U.S. guidelines and regulations. Yeah. So a local earth moving or development permit from the state, respective state EPA should be sufficient. Okay. Which we are already working on those things. So yeah, we filed one for the pilot project in Deketchik, for example. So we've gone through that process. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
No, that's great. So I think to answer the question right at the beginning, no. And United States issued NDPES Clean Water Act does not apply here, and it's not going to be required. Thank you. Right, let's see. For the bid date, please consider one bid per day instead of all bids due on May the 23rd. As far as the bids go, we are going to tackle that once we finish with these questions, so watch the space. For the bill of quantities, the speaker mentioned it cannot be changed. What if the specified quantities are incorrect? It doesn't matter, all right? You're bidding to see who wins the bid. And as long as your rates are correct, don't go and, you know, don't go and mess yourselves up completely by changing the amount of quantities that you're bidding on because you think we are not correct. If we're not correct, you've got a rate in there, and that will be dealt with once the contract is awarded. But don't bid on a different set of values and think that you're going to win the project, because that's going to get you disqualified. All right. So don't if we've got 33,000 cubes in there, quote on 33,000 cubes and put a rate in for 33,000 cubes. If it's 35,000 cubes at the end of the day, you will be paid for 35,000 cubes. This is not a lump sum project. All right. Not that it doesn't matter. It will be fantastic if you do catch some flaws or issues. Let us know. But it's, from a bidding point of view, it is a competitive bid on the same, as much as possible, an even playing field. Am I right, Peter?
100%. 100%. Okay. The quantities cannot be changed during the bidding process. Yes. So you're all competing with each other effectively in terms of your rates. Okay? And when it comes to construction, it is a measure and value job at the end of the day. if there's a BOQ line item for 10,000 square metres and it ends up being 8.5, then that's what you get paid for. Conversely, if it's over and it's 11.5, it'll be the same. All right, so it's important to understand that that's how these contracts work.
Thank you. Okay. Will the World Bank pipeline project also be live streamed tomorrow? Sorry, that's not sure of that. The requirement for submitting 5 years financial data and annual turnover data, we are going to cover that. Watch this space. There's been some changes. Good question. And how do we get to the next one? Preview. Page 5 of 5. I think that's it. We go back up, but I think we are done with those comments. So that's page 1 of 5. We've covered all of that, right? Page 2 of 5. Yep, Capway Sour Road. And page 5 of 5. So that's all the online comments that we got. I think we've answered those. Are there any other questions from the floor? And is there anything else coming in from online? Kenneth, can you see online? There's nothing else coming in online for questions.
Nothing else coming in online at the moment, but just a reminder to everyone that this is not the final day for asking questions, so you've got plenty more time to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, fantastic. Let's get on to some news from our side. Just pop this up. All right. Before I go into the CESMP explanation, which I've spent the whole weekend, I'm now fantastically familiar with how it works, so you'll be happy to know that I was as in the dark as what you guys were last week, because I know what it is, how it works, so I think I'm going to have a good shot at explaining it. And these two gentlemen sitting here have done this many times in the past, so especially Peter's going to give us a bit of input there as well. But I think I'd like to tackle what has come of last week's comments that have come through. So some key aspects. First of all, we would like to open up the opportunities for as many bids to come in as possible. And I think that is the target across the board. I'm going to be completely frank here. We don't want to skew it towards the local contractors. That's not fair, all right? But at the same time, we don't want to skew it towards international contractors. That's not fair. So we need to make it as level playing field as we possibly can. So we've taken all of your comments on board, and we have changed some of the things which, unfortunately, we're not stopping the bid process, but we're pausing the bid process because we have to change the bid documents in the packaging. So none of the bills of quantities or any of that is going to change, but the packaging is going to change so that people's qualification will make it more accessible. All right, so the first thing, sorry, is that better? So the first thing, and this is critical, the first thing is that here in Pohnpei, we have got 2 lots. Those 2 lots are the Causeway, P1, Kapwa East Sour Road, and then we've got Nantualek, Palapalap, and Pix Road as 1 lot. All right, we are splitting that into 3 separate lots so that they are going to have a lower value, which means that your qualification for those 3 lots is going to be lower. That's the first thing that's happening. None of the quantities or anything is going to change. So if you've started working on this already, and none of the information is going to change, the designs are not going to change. We are merely going to separate those 3 lots from 1 lot to 3 lots. I need to do a bit of work, get the BOQs into 3 separate BOQs, make sure that you've all got technical specifications for each of them. So I need to change that up. All right. That's the first change that's happening, which will allow more competition. The next thing that's happening is audited financials. We're changing that. It's audited financials or an approved certification to, we have got the wording for this, but it's going to be an approved certification that meets DTCI or government's level of certification on your financials. All right? So it's no longer strictly audited financials. I get that right, Sergey? Okay, fantastic. Peter?
Just clarify, but it's actually written into the documents at the moment, right, Sergey?
So in the bidding documents, it talks about submission of audited financial statements, or, if not required by the law of the bidder's country, other financial statements acceptable to the employer. So that clause is already in there. What we will issue is a notice explaining exactly what is acceptable to the employer. And that will be something that is achievable both internationally and here in Micronesia.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, then here's the best news. Two things that we are looking at. The one is not confirmed, and that's why this may take a week or two, but the other has been confirmed. With regards to the financials, it is now no longer going to be your financials for the past 5 years. It is going to be 3 financials of your choosing over the last 7 years. So you have the last 7 years to look at your financials, choose 3 of them, and those are the ones that you're going to submit. Okay? Does that make sense? Sergey?
What we're interested in is to see your capacity to deal with bigger contracts. So those, and in countries like Micronesia, you always have ups and downs in your annual turnover. So what the ADB has agreed to is to allow us to select those years that have the higher turnover.
Thank you.
Just a final point on that.
That's not working.
There we go.
So this is what is most likely to happen. It's yet to be confirmed. It's still being discussed internally at the moment. But yeah, 3 out of 7 years. Yeah. So these details will be given to everyone, and you'll have plenty of time to prepare your information to respond to that. So, well, we're basically saying that thank you for your feedback on that. It was very important to get that. So the right conversations are now happening on the employer's side, on the TCNI side, to change that, to make it achievable, essentially.
Yeah, and we've, you know, there are 1 or 2, yeah, Caroline, hang on.
Thank you. When you say for the past 7 years, 7 years from now, meaning up to 2017, fiscal year of 2017? So any 3 fiscal years, right? Okay. And so anything before 2017 is not acceptable. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. There are 1 or 2, well, there's several, as you can imagine now, there's going to be the way in which the scoring happens, there's going to be a few changes. So we do, and the actual bid documents themselves, we need to change that up. So you may have seen that there was, I think, was there a notice put out or an email put out? Not yet. Okay. But the closing date is going to be extended by a month. All right. So the closing date is no longer fixed. Sergey?
So what we've agreed with ADB and TCNI is that the link to the bidding documents will be removed while we make these amendments and prepare the notice. So there will be a notice issued to all the bidders that it will be removed for up to 2 weeks, where we're hoping. And within that period, we'll make the amendments, put the links, the bidding documents back up, explaining exactly which changes have been made, and providing a specific addendum and notice to action, so that each bidder will know what changes have been made. But these changes will not affect the scope of works, except for the issue with the lots that Martin explained. It will not affect the scope of works or any of the documents that you will be using for preparing your bid prices. The only thing that will be affected is the bidding process, so the qualification requirements and things like that. But that will be explained after the amendments have been made and approved by TCNI and ADB.
Thank you. I think what is really important here is we are not stopping the bid. All right? So this bid is not stopping. If you go to the link on the TCNI webpage, it will take you to a landing notice. It's not going to say this bid doesn't exist. So the bid is not stopping, it's continuing. We just need to make these amendments. We have a target date for the 22nd, which is 2 weeks today. We need to get the changes made this week. We need to get the approvals in place next week. We had a meeting with some very senior members from ADB, as well as the country officer, the senior procurement officer, and I think Kevin is even more senior he's the head of the whole transport for the sector. And so we've got really good people making these decisions. So it's going to be expedited. It's not going to be another 3 months. 22nd, that's the target date. The bid is being paused. It's not being stopped as a result of your inputs to make it more accessible to a wider playing field of people. All right? So please don't give up. Don't go in there and go, oh, well, that's never going to happen. 2 weeks, 22nd, that's going to get back up and running. Right. I think that's...
Just to stress again, it has been said by Martin, but the submission date has also been extended. Tentatively at this stage, TCNI is talking about 13th of June. But again, that will be confirmed in when we have the addendum. But in any case, there will be an extension to take account of this two-week lag that we have now.
And you can carry on working on stuff in the meantime, because it's going to happen, and like we say, the scope's not going to change. Any further questions from the floor? Anybody online that wants to ask a question? I thought that was all fairly good news this morning. So, no? Okay, we're good. I'm going to start the next the next explanation. There has been a lot of talk around the CESMP, Contractors' Environmental and Social Mitigation Plan, and it is something which you've got to get your head around conceptually. And once you do, you realize actually it's really simple. It's a very simple thing to deal with, but it is not that simple to roll out successfully. And there are some real caveats in place with the CESMP that can derail you day number one and cost you a huge amount of money at the end of your contract. Okay, so let's get into that. If it can go wrong, it will go wrong, and it will happen when you least expect it. I'm a bit concerned because I changed that. That's a bit worrisome. Let me just double check that I have got the correct file open here. Give me a second. Sorry.
So just while Martin's just dealing with that, I think that statement, just to carry on, is really what the way you should be thinking about a construction environmental and safeguards management plan. You are planning for risk at the end of the day and how you will deal with things when they come up. So to have that train of thought of, well, what can go wrong, and actually having some documentation with processes that will be followed for dealing with that during construction. Martin's got quite a lot to go over here.
I'm back.
Back to you. Yep.
Sorry about that. Okay. That's better. Okay. Not much has changed. It's just not an engineering principle. Environmentalists and sociologists may think it is, but engineers don't. Right. Moving on. Okay. This is the official line. All right. The successful bidder contractor shall submit a contractor environmental and social management plan commensurate with the risks and impacts of the proposed works and activities. These strategies and plans shall describe in detail the actions, materials, equipment, management processes, etc. that will be implemented by the contractor and its subcontractors. In developing these strategies and plans, the successful bidder shall have regard to SMP, which is in volume 5. An acceptable submission, and here's the critical thing, 3 things. Your submission includes an outline CESMP, not a CESMP. All right? That's really important. We're not asking you to do one. We're asking you to understand what it is and demonstrate that. It needs to be clear and concise, and it needs to demonstrate a good understanding that you know what it means and you can implement it when you actually start work. Our advice as professionals that have done this on both sides of the fence, for contractors and for supervision consultants, is get somebody in to do it for you. All right? Whoever is going to put your CESMP in place when you get awarded the contract, just pay a bit of money and get them to do it now as an outline. It'll save you so many headaches later down the line. All right, so that's just a piece of advice that you can take or leave, but that is our experience, is that contractors that do put bids in, that have had a professional look at that and put it together, have got a far better shot at landing a high technical score than contractors that try and think they can do it themselves. It's totally up to you, but that's our advice. It's money well spent if you really want to win the job. Okay, successful bidder's responsibility. You're going to be responsible for translating volume number 5, the environmental and social mitigation plan, into a construction environmental and social mitigation plan. Okay, and it's going to reflect the methodology that you're going to use right throughout the works contracts. All right. You're going to, and I'm going to stress this 100 times, you're going to take an ESMP that is state specific. We call it general, but it is still got, it's backed by a lot of studies, a lot of surveys, a lot of input from ourselves, from the design consultant, but it's general for the state that those roads are in, and you have to change it into site specific. Okay? So it's not just a cookie cut, copy it across. It's got to be site specific. So that is really the big difference between an ESMP and a CESMP, is that you're going from a general ESMP that we've put together as part of the design documentation, and you're making it site specific and demonstrating to us you understand it and you know what you're doing as far as that specific site goes. All right? The consultant will approve it, the CESMP, upon advice from the PMU before any physical works can be undertaken. All right? What does that mean? You don't get an extension of time. You don't get your contract. Your contract doesn't start, then you do your CESMP, and then the clock starts ticking on the construction time period. All right? Your contract starts, you then do your CESMP, it gets approved, and then you're allowed access to site to start working. You don't get an extension if it takes you 4 months to get it approved. All right? Clock started ticking. And in the time frames, we have allowed for a month to get that approved, not more. Okay. There is also, if you take a look at the bill of quantities, there is a line item here which links back to the specifications. There is a description here as far as the specifications goes. Anybody that is in this meeting and online will have access to this presentation. I would advise you get these slides, because we've also given you another leg up from a different set of specifications. This is ASH2. It describes it, but it's not overly clear. All right? And so we've popped in here some specifications we've used and developed in Samoa, which just gives a far clearer picture of what we're looking for. And it'll make your life a lot, you'll recognize it more than this. All right. The process. Volume 5, ESMP, which you'll find in the tender documents, needs to be converted into an outline document, a CESMP, prepared by the successful bidder. All right, so let me just re-say that. Volume 5, the ESMP. You do an outline document, you become the successful bidder, you win the project, you turn that into a contractor's ESMP. That then gets approved, and then you can mobilize. All right, you can't mobilize whilst that's being approved, because part of that is, well, how are you going to mobilize? Okay, so nothing happens till it's approved. Again, piece of advice, employ someone. specializes in this. Just employ them to do it, and then you can get somebody else as an environmental health and safety officer to run it. Bid inputs. Volume 5, ESMP. That's the starting point. Understanding what the site-specific CESMP will be. So you pull out the most critical aspects, and you just demonstrate to us that you can understand it. Then you do a contract management plan, referencing the ESMP information into that contract management plan to show that it is site-specific for your contract. And then you create an outline. The process is no different to what you're going to be following to figure out in your technical proposal how to do the job. I'm looking at it. If I was putting it together, I would do the outline CESMP now, and then I would hang the rest of my technical proposal around it. You'll see in a moment when I show you the Samoan specification why I say that. So this is the bid process. What I showed you before was the successful bidder, what they have to do. What do you have to do now? I think that's the most important thing, because we don't want to waste your time and then you're not successful and then you've done all of this work and you're cross with us. All right? We don't need that. There's going to be a lot of work coming up in Micronesia that we're hoping that we're going to be working together for several years still to come. Bid process. Read and understand volume 5, the ESMP. That is the starting point. Then, that's general. Think of the site-specific requirements for what you are bidding on. All right, so if you're bidding on Chook, understand that social is hugely important. If you're bidding on Nantualik, environmental is not necessarily as important as keeping accesses open and traffic management. All right, so think of the specific, site-specific things that could affect your interaction with the environment and the people. All right, and then identify any other management risks and requirements that you may need for the project. Okay, and then create a management plan which combines all of these aspects, the environmental, the social. It must combine that. It is called a CESMP, but it is ultimately a contracts management plan. All right. The plan is developed at the, I'm going to just read this, all right? It's important. The bid process requires a well thought through management plan for your construction site that demonstrates your consideration for both the environment and the community. This plan is developed at the start of the contract prior to work starting on site. It is advised that the contractor employs a specialist in this field to do this plan. Possibly the same person can be considered at bid stage to do the outline. All right? Remember, the start date is before the CESMP submission, and failure to gain approval timelessly does not constitute grounds for delays at the end of the project. Okay. Here's the example outline, and I think it's important to see this. So this is your contract management plan, all right? But it's a specification, it's general specification, and it is linked to a CESMP in a bill of quantities in a different country, different set of specifications. It's not ASHTO, all right? So you can't depend on this. But if you take these slides away, it gives you a good idea of what we're talking about. So just looking at this, I suppose I can use a mouse, can't I? My mouse there? Yeah, okay. So just looking at this, I'm going to run through it quickly. This is the document that this particular project required, and it is similar, all right? I'm not going to go into the details of it, but you can see we've got scope, objectives, references, definitions, submission of approvals. All right, it's all attached to the front of your document. Then you've got an environmental management plan. So the construction environmental management plan, the CEMP, the environmental site meetings, noise, how you're going to deal with it, archaeological, botanical, and heritage features. Tell us how you're going to deal with it. Okay, artifacts, protection of works, topsoil, runoff, hazardous materials. What are you going to do? Where are you going to put your refueling sites and lighting of fires in winter, because I know how seriously cold it gets here. Blasting and structurally damaging processes like Ganya Bridge. How are you going to deal with it? Okay? That's what it's asking. Have you thought it through? Are you going to deal with it? Quality. Quality management plan, a CMP. General, inspection and tests, control of construction processes, identification of traceability, defective work, engineers' audits. How are you going to deal with it? This is all going to go into your contractor's environmental social management plan. Okay. You're not doing this for the bid, you're giving us an outline, and you can't just focus on, you can't just cookie copy this, because this is not ASH2. All right? Occupational health and safety, general, hazard risk assessment. So, safety management, incident notification, STIs, STDs, HIV AIDS alleviation program. I'm covering a lot of this later on in the slides, what each of those are, but you can see this is the overall. Traffic management, how you're going to deal with the traffic. Public management plans, durability assurance plans, maintenance management plans, measurements and payment. Can you guys see it's a contractor's management plan? How are you going to manage your site efficiently? How are you going to manage your site so that it doesn't impact on people's lives negatively or as little as possible? And how are you going to manage your contract so that the environment at the end of the day doesn't get damaged? Okay? So you can see that all of these things are environmental and social orientated. It's not about where am I going to get my materials from, how am I going to achieve my compaction. No, that's not what we're interested in. Okay? It's when you achieve your compaction and you're using a 26-ton vibrating roller, all right, how are you going to stop the guy's house from being cracked because you're 2 meters away from it? That's what we're looking for in the contractor's environmental social management plan. How are you going to deal with the grievance redress mechanism? So when somebody's really unhappy because you've driven over their favorite dog, what are you going to do about it? How can they address that grievance, and who are you going to have to address that grievance? Okay? That's what we're looking for. It's, you're there, you are impacting on people's lives negatively. We've all been there when you come out your front door and you can't get out because somebody's building a road. How are you going to deal with it? That's what the contractor's management plan is all about. It's not about how you're going to do the job. It's about when you do the job, how are you going to deal with the people and the environment? Okay, I'm going to stop there with this on the screen. Any questions? Fairly clear? Larry?
I mean, there's nobody local, so
I'll do it for you. How much are you going to pay? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I got this.
No, I can't. Conflict.
Look, I think the point is, I guess in most construction firms, you won't have environmental and social discipline people in the core of your team, but they are out there. Olivier and his team with PCS are examples of people throughout the islands that do this kind of stuff. They may not have written these things before, so there's school weakness there, but there's plenty of people out there outside of Micronesia that have done this stuff before. And for the sake of getting them involved, someone who's actually understands what the reviewing side looks at when doing it is a great investment at the end of the day. We've seen it time and time again. It doesn't discriminate whether it's local contractors or international. The process of preparing the plans initially, the better job that the contractor can do from the get-go, the easier it makes it the whole way through. The first gate, if you will, is the engineers team. And they will have plenty of comments and we'll come back. There'll be an update. And then it goes beyond the engineers team to the implementing agencies of DTCI's team. They may have people that in particular are looking at that. It also goes to the donor, all right? And that's where a lot of specialists get involved. So it's quite a rigorous review process. It's very important to the funders to get these documents squared away early on, and to just underscore that very important point that nothing of substance can happen on site until this is all done. All right? You can start at organising your initial logistics and preparing your permits for establishing where your site yards are and your offices, etc. But to actually go and start the job, turning dirt on site, that's not going to happen until you have this management plan squared away. So coming back to the original point, if you can find someone out there who's got some experience in doing this, it's going to help you know at the end of the day. It's just, it's not something that we say has to happen. It will just help a lot.
So it's
Sites. Given the mic.
Oh, yes, sorry.
So it's state and site specific.
So it's state, site specific.
Just site for your purpose.
Okay, that the site, for example, Kosrae versus Ponte versus Chu. The social environment in each of the states is slightly different. So the one reviewing it, what standards are you going to be using? An outside standard or a standard from Kosrae? And if you're using standards from Kosrae, for example, have you established some of the criteria that we should be looking at? You said you did some studies. Can we have access to those studies?
Volume number 5 is the ESMP, and that was done as each state. So the ESMPs are state specific, all right, but they are general for the state. And the as far as the okay, so I didn't look over there. so the ESMPs that are in volume number 5, that's why we do them, are specifically for the states. It's covering the challenges, specific challenges that we found in church, specific challenges that we found, less challenges again. So yeah, take a look at the ESMPs. The other thing is we do depend on you guys that are doing the write-up to have your own spin on it. So for example, if there is any contractor that, and we're going to be doing part of this, we're going to be doing some of the evaluations, and we quite understand, so does DTCI. You will be evaluated locally. It's not going to be an international evaluation. So if somebody comes along and says that they're going to just establish their camp in Chuk here, and we know how difficult Chuk is, and we go, well, it's just not going to work. It's not realistic. We're going to score them badly. Technically, they're going to get scored badly. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, having that local knowledge is going to be in your favor. All right. So it's a ESMP, which is the general state, and when you think of the site, you go, if I was going to do this job, these are the challenges I face. This is how I would mitigate those challenges. And if you're identifying challenges that don't exist in the ESMP, so much the better. You know, it really is you just challenging yourself to look at it and go, walk yourself through it in your head. If I did the job, this is what I would do. You know, and that would be state specific already, because you guys know the country better than anybody else.
The ESMP that's in the bid docs has already been a lot of research, consideration, consultation, not just with the funder of the project, but also the state and national government regulatory bodies in that regard. So, yeah, it's not like you're having to go and figure out all of that stuff yourself. It's already a lot that's gone in behind that ESMP, and the idea really is to make it much simpler when it comes to the construction. The responsibility and the expectation on the contractor is to turn that into something very specific to what you're doing on that site. That's really the crux of it.
It's a practical document.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So volume 5 is going to have information that's specific for each state on each project. And basically our ESMP is going to basically be judged or be viewed in light of volume 5.
That's good.
Automatically say, okay, you know, it's different, you don't like it, it slows
Let
forward.
me put it to you this way. If you submit a bid with your CESMP outline that looks exactly like the ESMP that we put into the document, you're probably going to score very badly. All right?
We want that. We want to see that difference of opinion. But remember, what's important here is you're not producing a CESMP. You're producing an outline document. So you're producing the outline. That's kind of the outline that we're looking for. And yes, we encourage difference of opinion, because that shows us that you're thinking it through and you've got a handle on what you're doing. That's going to give you points. This is not a tick box item. This is us trying to judge as assessors whether you can actually do this job locally or not. And this is probably the only practical document out of the lot of it. The rest of it's really just fundamentally ticking boxes and putting rates in. This document isn't. Sergen.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you've had a look at the ESMP. The ESMPs are very general documents. They're specific for each state, but they basically identify areas that the contractors or the bidders need to take into account when they prepare their bids. So for the outline, what we actually want is to see that you have read this ESMP and that you understand the implications, the cost implications, the organizational implications, etc. So for instance, if I just take one, this is the ESMP for COSRA, but it will be similar in other states. It talks about different project activities, so it mentions the operation of construction plant and vehicles generating emissions, dust and pollution. How do you deal with that? So what we would like to see in an outline is just a brief statement showing how you plan to deal with that, and that may be very specific in according to the lot that you are bidding for. So for instance, in Tafunsak, you will have a different approach than in the Tafunsak bypass. You will have a different approach than in Leilu Tofu. But the outline is just so that we have a feeling, okay, they've seen this, they understand it, they've costed for it, so that they can actually implement it. Once you've been awarded the bid, then you are required to prepare a full CESMP. And I actually find the name a bit confusing, because it's not just the ESMP and the contractor's version of that, or the construction version of that. It's actually a construction management plan integrated with the ESMP. So it has all your construction works, but for each of those, you also have to identify what are the environmental and social implications of those works, and how can I mitigate those or avoid those. So the actual CSMP after contract award is a much bigger document, and it's basically a contract management plan combined with your ESMP. But at the bidding stage, we're mainly asking for shows that you understand the ESMP and the implications it have, that you're thinking about traffic management, that you're thinking about dust suppression, that you're thinking about where do I put my fuel storage that it doesn't leak into the bay, for instance. And that evaluation of your outline during the bidding stage, it is a bit subjective. We can't make it fully objective, because every bidder will have his own approach to dealing with those different things. But there will be several different bid evaluators involved, so you do get an independent view. So some will focus more on certain issues, and others will focus more on other issues. But overall, you get a very objective view.
Giving confidence during the bid stage that when you do get the contract, that you are actually going to be able to do what you say you're going to do. You're going to be able to follow up on your outline and produce document. That's really what the evaluators will be looking for. All right.
Just the last one. So the outline CSMP, we are not going to see, okay, is everything in there? Is it complete? Can we approve it? That comes after contract award. The outline CESMP is just, are we sure that this bidder has reviewed the ESMP, understands the implications, and has costed for it? That's all we're looking at. So there may be some gaps in there, and if you are awarded the contract, you will need to address those in your final CESMP. But at the bidding stage, it's just a way of making sure that you review the ESMP, and don't only start looking at it after contract.
Okay, so for Inchuk, for example, where I run over somebody's favorite pig, I get the checkbook out, but in Ponte I get the barbecue out.
I wouldn't go checkbook, I'd go cash. But yeah, I think that's why I'm quite keen that I leave this slide in. Because it does give you an idea of ultimately where it's going to end up. Yeah, Richard.
Your CSMP, is there a time where you guys have to get back to us, or because the time starts ticking as soon as you submit that, right?
We'll work with you. So we're not going to just kind of go, right.
You and us. No, we're not like that. We're going to work with you to get that thing out and going within the first month. That is the intention. But, Peter.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, as soon as it lands, and even before, we're already having conversations with it. So, especially our safeguards people will have some heads up and know what's coming anyway. So straight into it and turning it around. But the important thing is that it must come from the contractor to start with, and it must be built into the plan to allow for the review process as well. What we often see, it's not really unrealistic when you think about it from start to finish of an expectation to turn around a document like this. But the reality that we see far too often is that on the contractor's side, they haven't really given it the importance that it needed in the first place. And that's where all the problems stem from. And it comes down to things like, well, if there was an individual employed who had prepared these documents before, they've worked on ADB funded projects, well, they know very well what kind of comments are going to come back. Preempt it, do it, and minimize that whole risk of delays happening at the start. Right? So we can't move away from the contract requirements. Engineers team has a time frame that must respond back on things, but if you're to work to that, it's still not going to work. It's going to chew much further into over a month total turnaround. The best thing to do when you know you're going to get the job, even before you start with a signed contract, start getting straight into that, preparing all that stuff. You minimize delays on this very important documentation right at the start. Everything else will become much easier.
And like I said, it becomes your plan, becomes your rollout plan, really. So I quickly Googled it. There are people that specialize in this. So if you just Google it, CSMP contract specialists, site-specific specialists, it just immediately pops up. So this is not an isolated problem. This isn't something that we're introducing. This is obviously something which is a whole field out there that people run up against. So there's a whole field of people out there that'll help you through that process.
Can I ask, like on compact funded, do they not have something similar?
No, they don't.
Olivia, do you have any experience or comments you might want to add that might be helpful here?
Yeah, we've. It's not, as they're saying, it's not rocket science, and I think if you have a general understanding of the environmental and social, cultural background in FSM, you can easily come up with this and link it to your overall implementation plan. We've been involved in developing some of these for renewable energy projects for ADB in the past, so we can provide some guidance if necessary to help, and even provide some guidance on experts that we've worked with. If that's requested, we can either myself or Patrick can provide that. So yeah, we'll definitely work to support on the ground locally with any contractors, and provide them with some of our experience, or even some things that we've worked on to give the FSM context. But there's also people that we've engaged, international people that have produced these that are very good at it. It's in their field. So
great, thank you. Okay, just coming back to the slide so that we can move on from this.
Sorry, Martin, just one last thing. Go back to the slide with the details. So yeah, look, this will be made available to everyone here, but I just want to emphasize that what you see, this is a table of contents for a specification that guides the parameters for a management plan. That is not a table of contents for a management plan itself. This is the reference specification to be used to it. I just want to clarify.
Okay, no, that's fine. And I wanted to bring you back to this slide. This is what is in the bid documents. All right? So this is the specification that covers the management plan. You'll see in the bill of quantities. Another reason you should understand it is because you need to put a price in there to actually do it, okay? So this is the specification that covers that bill item, and it's a lot less well structured than the other specification, but again, it's guidance. So I would read the ESMP, I would read the specification that we have got from ASH2, what is expected. These are the things that whoever assesses your documents, they're going to have read that, they're going to know that, and they're going to be assessing it against that. And I would also encourage you to just go through this slightly wider contract management plan, get your head around this so that it gives you a good idea of what you're in for, okay? And then Olivia can guide you with experts that have done this before. But like I said, it really is a contract management plan showing how you're going to deal with the environment, how you're going to deal with the population, you know, how you're going to roll the project out. So it's a good place to start as an outline and then base your technical proposal against that. And that's what I would do. I would kind of get an outline of how I'm going to do the project in my head, write it all down, and then start building my technical proposal around that. If you do it that way around, you're going to score substantially more points because it is really important to all of the international funding agencies that environment and social is put way up there. So if you are basing your if you're basing your technical rollout of the project on environmental and social standards, you know, thinking all of this through, yeah, okay, that's going to give you, you know, like if I'm belaboring the point, but it is a really important, it's a really important aspect of what you're doing here. All right, Richard.
Working on this, because, for instance, a fuel storage, right? EPA or Petrocorp will tell you, okay, you got to do this, and it passes local standards, local regulations. But in the outside world, that won't pass, but it will pass here.
Okay,
what level are we going to be following? EPA might say you can do this, and we can do it here. No problem. Safety standards. You know, a traffic man might just require safety vest, shoes, and a hat with a flag. Is that going to meet the requirements that somebody might be reviewing? I mean, the standards could be Western standards, or it could be, you know, different levels of standards. And I guess for working in this environment, what I would think it would be local standards.
Local standards. Contractors,
environmental and social mitigation plan is site specific, and that means it must meet the cultural and environmental norms, all right? But at the same time, if the cultural and environmental norms, and some of the places I've worked basically means you can throw your trash in a hole or you can burn that trash, and they're quite happy with that, that's not going to fly. All right, because you also got to understand that the whole intention here is to build capacity and to bring in international standards that are slightly higher than the local standards, or we're just going to end up doing the same thing over and over again. So just be aware of that, and that's why having an international consultant is good, because you could say these are the cultural norms, these are the local standards, this is what we would normally do, and the international consultant, as Peter says, who works with ADB documentation, will say, sure, no problem, but ADB won't accept this. They would be happy with that. You've justified it, but it may be locally acceptable, but it won't be acceptable to Asian Development Bank, so we're going to need to change that up. So that's why it's important to have somebody that knows both of those. But that is if you are a successful bidder. In this instance, when you're bidding, if you say, we have thought about the trash that we're going to be generating on site, and we're going to have a central collection point for rubbish, and we're going to put in a situation where twice a week we're going to be collecting that rubbish and taking it to the dump site. Enough. Done. All right? Whether they burn it in the dump site or whether you were meaning that dump site is around the corner in a hole that I've just dug with my back actor, that comes in if you win the project. But you've thought about it. That's the important thing. So for bidding point of view, don't go further than that. Don't go to town. You're not putting a CESMP in place. You're merely demonstrating you understand the principles that are set out in the ESMP. All right? But that's why it is important to get somebody that knows, you come with the local knowledge, and this other person comes with the international knowledge, and between the two of you, they can say, yeah, that's fine. You know, no problem. Traffic management, you just need a reflective jacket and a cone. Okay, that's fine if that's what you normally do. Or you're burning your trash, that's not fine. All right, so it might be locally acceptable, but it's not acceptable to ADB. It's things like that. That's why it would be good. That's why I'm saying don't employ somebody permanently. All right, you're going to have an environmental health and safety officer permanently employed, but I wouldn't get an international to do that. That's going to cost you an arm and a leg and throw your price through the roof. But putting the initial one together, it's a good shout.
So good morning, everybody. So it means like whatever data we collected internationally or locally, so we can make comparison between those two. So whatever the best, we can work with that. Is that correct? So, for example, Richie, he explained regarding EPA or petrol, regarding the fuel. So if whoever we're working with internationally, whatever their idea, what's the best we can use we can work with that.
If I understood what you're saying, basically if you've got two standards in front of you and the one of them is local and it's lower than the other standard, which is international, go with the international standard. This document is a practical working document. Yeah, Sergey.
I have the feeling we're getting very caught up in high international standards. Again, if you have a look at the ESMP, it's a very basic document. It sounds very scary, environmental social management plan, but it's a very basic document. So it talks about different project activities. It talks about the possible environmental and social impacts that those activities could have. But it also comes with a list of different mitigation measures, and those aren't very high standard. I mean, let me just go up here to the dust suppression, for instance. It has all kinds of mitigation measures about spraying and damping the road to suppress dust. If you have a paved surface, removing the dust from the pavement. But also things like informing nearby residents and businesses that there will be some dust generation over the coming so many days or weeks. They're very practical things, and that's what we are focused on. We're not talking about extremely high standards that the road has to be totally dust-free and you have to have curtains around your roadside to avoid the dust getting anywhere. It's just we want to reduce the negative impacts on environment and on people as much as possible. And as long as you come with practical ways of doing that, that is fine. But what we are aiming at is that there's an active, there's activity on the side of the contractor to try and mitigate these negative impacts, and to do so across the board. So again, go through the ESMP. They're all very similar as far as I'm aware, and you will see that you, as a contractor, knowing the different states, will probably have additional things that you want to add, because you know that Chuk is very different from Pohnpei, is very different from Yap, and you know what you need to do in one state that you don't need to do in the other state, or vice versa, and put that in your plan. Again, we want to make sure, especially in the CESMP, that you've thought about what you need to do to mitigate negative impacts, and that you've costed for it, so that it actually happens in practice. Because you will be held accountable for actually implementing your plan. And there's even a budget line for implementing your CESMP.
Look, we've got Dave Lee's on the call, on the live stream. Dave is from our team. He's a very experienced environmental, climate change and social and whatnot specialist. So he's just added a comment here on fuel. A typical example is, are you going to have fuel tanks on skids on site in a field, or can you use a local gas station? So that's all you really need to consider is that kind of thing, and write about it, right?
I
Okay, I have got loads of slides and things that I got to get through that go into a bit more detail on exactly that. So we've picked up some of the highlights from the ESMP. Dave's actually the man that put the ESMP together, and these slides were put together by Dave. So we're gonna cover each of those aspects. My question to you is, do you want me to push on for another half an hour, or do you want to have a tea break? How are you guys doing? How are you feeling? Should we move it on? You all good? Okay, fantastic. All right, successful contractors' responsibilities. All right, so we're now going to get into a little bit into the weeds. It's important you understand that if you are successful, what you need to do, so that you can give us an outline now while you're bidding to show that you understand that. So, moving on. Preparing and submitting for review and approval the CSMP, as we've covered. Coordinating with PMU and the PRF consultant for updating the CSMP as or when required. We've allowed for 18 months in the bill of quantities. So that's not necessarily the full 2-year period, but we've allowed for 18 changes, all right, throughout the contracts as things happen. Adhering to the commitments made in the CSMP. These are your responsibilities. Resolving corrective action instructions. So RCAs issued by the supervising consultant in a prompt and timely manner. Undertake noise measurements to establish the noise baseline for subsequent noise monitoring in the event of complaints. Recruiting an approved service provider if required to deliver the STI, HIV, AIDS briefings and awareness and prevention program. That's your environmental health and safety officer. Coordinating with the construction supervising consultant about continual community consultation and informing community of progress through information disclosure, letting people know what you're doing and what's coming up. Establishing a grievance redress mechanism and implementing it. We have a full grievance redress mechanism which is being given to you as part of the documentation that is in the bid documents. Okay, so implementing it. Responsibilities continue. Obtaining environmental permits for new material sources. So if you run out of material and all of a sudden there's new material that you can get from somewhere else in the state, you got to get those. You got to get those environmental permits in place. Ensuring you can't just go and grab it from the guy's backyard because he says you can. Ensuring that all imported material and equipment is subject to quarantine clearance and receives appropriate national clearances to prevent invasive diseases. So don't arrive in Kosrae with all your imported materials and you can't get them released. An environmental health and safety officer will maintain a site diary and a grievance redress mechanism register, including actions taken to resolve the issue and closeout dates. So it's not good enough that you just merely go, you can complain, but we're not going to do anything about it. We'll write it down, okay? That's not the point. And update the CESMP, including issue and response to corrective action requests, consultation activities, and grievance redress mechanism implementation in the monthly site reports. So if there's been grievances, we need to know about it in the monthly site reports and how you've dealt with it, or if you haven't dealt with it, what you are planning to do to deal with it. Okay, these are your responsibilities with regards the CESMP on site. General understanding, the ESMP is a general document, CESMP is a site-specific document. It belongs to you, the contractor, and you, the contractor, can change it at any time on site. If you feel it is no longer applicable, or you feel that you've been going about something wrong, you don't need permission to change it. You merely bring that up and you say, we have implemented something new to ensure that we cover our bases. It should be simple, practical, and easy to understand. It should be quantitative, not vague. So for example, don't say some workers were sick this weekend, say 50 workers, okay? It should make time-bound statements. As an example, the works along road section X will take 2 weeks. So don't tell people we're going to be working in your area in the near future. That doesn't help. You've got to tell them. From this date to this date, expect disruptions. If you have had bad news to deliver, be direct. So pouring concrete, once started, cannot stop, may extend overnight. All efforts will be made to minimize noise, but some noisy activities are unavoidable. Followed by, we will make all efforts to notify potentially affected residents and apologize in advance. That will be advertising, big signage. Okay. There are certain documents you need before the works start. And these can include, but it's not an exhaustive list, all right? Health and safety plan. How you're going to provide for your workers. Food, sanitation on site, showers, drinking water, 2 liters per person per day. Third-party safety. How will you stop children playing near your vehicles or entering the site after work? Emergency response plan in case of fire. Accident need for first responders such as police, fire ambulance. How long does it take for them to get to you? So you're going to need to do an emergency response plan. A traffic management plan. Will you have trucks delivering materials to site? How will they interact with the existing traffic flow? Pedestrian management plan. How will you segregate passers-by in a safe way from construction activities? Way too often we are having to walk around construction materials and equipment and over piles of things because there's nowhere else to walk. All right, how are you going to minimize that? How are you going to stop that? All right. And then we have protected areas. Again, you'll find these protected areas. We will give you maps, but in the supplementary information, all of this information is there under the environmental studies. We've given you the initial environmental analyses, so they're in there. Take a look at what is in the supplementary information folder that we've given you, because we'll only put supplementary information in there if it's necessary. We're not going to waste your time. There's geotech information in all of them. I know I put most of that together myself. There's geotech information in there. There's environmental. I've given you guys the full due diligence report, which tells you exactly the back. It's over 200 pages. Fantastic evening reading. All right. At the end, it tells you who we spoke to, which households we went and visited. It gives you the confidence that when you get on site and somebody stops you, you can say, hey, you're on page number 193, and you said it was okay back then. Now we're here. All right. So it's in there. It's all in there, and it's under the supplementary information. Things like this, protected areas, they are in there. These are sensitive environmentally, ecologically, culturally, and traditionally. They must be avoided. So show how you're going to avoid them. Don't drive your trucks through the Trocus sanctuary, rather go around. If you're going to be delivering soils to a road, and the quickest way is to hire a boat and just have them bring it to shore, rather don't do that if it's going through mangroves and a sanctuary. Okay. So protected areas. Let's look at the application on site. I am rushing a little bit. I want to just give you an overview, and then give you a chance to ask some questions. If I'm going too fast, slow me down. All right. I am reading a lot of the stuff because I didn't put it together myself. But please just feel free to slow me down if there's anything that you want more clarity on. Okay. Let's look at the on-site application of what we're talking about. On-site, as supervision consultants, we're going to want to see induction training. We're not going to want to see guys that you've just hired off the street because you needed an extra 2 laborers just suddenly being there helping you turn bolts on the back of a Caterpillar. All right? It's dangerous. They need induction training, and we're going to want to see some sort of certification and how you're going to do that, and how you're going to control that from the guy that's turning the bolt on the Caterpillar, not just bringing his cousin to work in the morning. Okay? Keep records of their names and the date that you trained them, and make sure that they all have personal protective equipment. That would be safety boots, helmets, high-vis jackets, earplugs, goggles, gloves. In Micronesia, you wear all of that, you'll probably last half an hour on site, and then you will die from exposure. All right? But make sure that whatever you provide them is costed for, okay? So don't come blind and then go, well, we want an extra item here because we suddenly have to pay for all of this for the guys coming to site. And you can't just tell them get your own, because they're going to come with a real ragtag motley and they're not going to be allowed on site. Okay, so this is all part of your pricing. Be aware. This is what you're going to need to do when site starts. Okay, make sure they understand. If they are found on site not wearing their protective equipment, okay, they're going to be summarily dismissed. So this must, when you hire them, we would like to see the contracts. We would like to see an example of how are you hiring these people? Is this written into their contracts? Are they aware of this? How are you making them aware that they have to wear their PPE? All right, make sure they understand safety signs, put warnings in more than one language. You know, one of the things which I see here, which is really, really important, is escape routes. If you're working close to the coast, make sure that part of your induction training is escape routes, guys. If there's a tsunami, this is what you are going to hear. This is the sound that we're going to make. get off the road and get into safety. And I see there are some escape routes that we saw when we went to Namdal the other day. It's important that that is part of the training, and especially if you're going to bring some international workers, you know, they're not familiar with the area. Make sure that they know that there is that high potential for tsunamis and for earthquakes in this region. All right. On site, erect large signs giving details of the company and 24/7 contact details. Okay? So who do they complain to? Give them the telephone number. Make it a central area and don't put the name of your competitor there. All right? That's not allowed. Conduct public relations exercises with local residents. Best thing to do there is just on a regular basis, have a game of soccer. You know, set up something where you're interacting with the local people, but that's also dangerous because you've got to be really careful that your workers are segregated. If you're bringing in internationals, you're going to have to provide housing for internationals, especially international labor, separate to local labor, separate to the local community. So there's all sorts of issues there, but depends on where you are. In Chuk, it's not a problem because the father will just kill them.
Are you actually going to have to establish your own facilities to accommodate them, or are you able to avail of hostels or other accommodation that's already in the community and out there, and think that way too? That could actually be a good way to get the community on board straight away by using facilities that they have available.
Respect them if you expect them to help. All right? Say sorry before the event, not afterwards. Encourage them to complain to you, not your competitor. No, sorry. Not write to the local newspapers. Okay? And don't be afraid to use humor. All right? There's a typical sign. Why not? People should know that things are going to go, you know, things don't always go according to plan. Well, that's fine, but we have a grievance redress mechanism you can complain to, and you will be heard. All right, that's really important. We're going to get into that. So I've covered this is what we've pulled out, what we've lifted out of the typical CESMP, and these are the things I'm going to be covering: grievance response mechanism or grievance redress mechanism, labor practices, refueling and storage of hazardous materials, toolbox briefings, incidents and near misses, gender equality and social inclusivity, corrective action reporting, and when you finish the job, you're not necessarily finished the job because you'd like to release your performance guarantee. Okay? So let's tackle each of those topics. That must be in the CESMP. The grievance redress mechanism. You have to set up a grievance. Okay, let me call it what Dave's put here. You have to set up a grievance response mechanism. So you have to say how you're going to deal with the grievances that come from site, if there are any. If there aren't any grievances from site, let me tell you now, there are always grievances from site. So if there aren't any, then we know you're not applying it. Okay? So appoint a member of your staff as a complaints response officer. Preferably don't make it the worst performing person on your staff every month. It shouldn't become a competition. All right? Just appoint a member of your staff that everybody knows that is really interested in getting involved in the community. That's generally the best person to appoint. They must be available 24/7. Several staff can alternate, but I would suggest that you just have 2 or 3 people on site from your staff, from your senior staff, that can deal with this. All right? They must be pleasant, and they got to answer complaints politely. So don't appoint the biggest guy that you employ to be that guy. Right? They should promise to respond within 24 hours, and they need to do so. That's really important. When you don't do so, after the 3rd time, people go to the papers. They go, there's no point in complaining. All right? They should not argue with the complainant or be rude. Remember, they are not there to solve the grievance. They are there to hear the grievance, write it down, and bring it to management to decide on a means of solving the grievance, because it could land you in hot water legally and community-wise if your community officers just decide they're going to solve it on their own bat, you know, like you say, we'll just pull out the checkbook. That could really bite you. All right. They must be trained. They must not admit liability or apologize, but they do need to make sure that they promise to investigate. So it's their job to write it down. They need to write it down. They need to make it clear. They need to make sure that the person signs it. There's forms in place, and then it gets given to you, and you decide how you're going to deal with this grievance. Encourage complaints to you. It's better for residents to complain to you directly as the contractor and let you sort it out, then go elsewhere, the newspaper, the police, the local politician, or even directly to Asian Development Bank when they see them on site or wherever. All right? We are in a small community, folk. This is a very small community, and what will happen is if somebody's upset, they're just going to go straight to the governor because it's their cousin. Okay, so try and avoid that by making it open and having that community forum where people can play soccer and say, you know, I was really upset this weekend, this and this and this happened. And then immediately jump on it and shut it down. Okay. All right, I'm going to stop there. Any questions on the grievance redress mechanism? No? You're all happy? Pretty straightforward. Okay.
Just to recognise that there will be things that come up too that is just fully not expected that the contractor alone can solve everything as well. There will be some instances where it needs to involve DCNI, state municipality, etc. But the idea is to make sure that that's well managed with communication right from the get-go. It's all documented. People can refer back to things in writing from day one when it was raised. And things are methodical in the way that they're closed out at the end of the day.
Thanks. Reporting, writing it down, recording. I can't emphasize it enough.
Sorry, just a point that Dave's made that's a very good one. On complaints, there are examples of mistaken identity as well. So that just underscores why it's so important to have records in place, rather than hearsay and getting confused between people and dates and times. Just having a written record that can always be referred back to. So thanks for that, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. Okay. It's a bit like speaking to God, isn't it? He's out there. I know he is. Right, moving on. Labour practices. I know that there is, I mean, I've worked now in Micronesia for almost 2 years, and I know it's really difficult with regards to labour. It's probably the most difficult aspect of working here, and it's very difficult integrating internationals that you have to get because you can't find the local skill sets that you're looking for. But offer to hire local residents as unskilled workers. You know, try and go that route. Try to hire 30% of unskilled workers as females. All right, especially single females running households that need the cash. Bring them in, find positions for them, preferably not a flag waver, because then they're wearing all that PPE, and like I said, they'll only last half an hour. Okay, but somebody that's got no skill sets can make a good cup of coffee. You know, some of the best cups of coffee I've had is from people that can't read and write. So bring them in, let them be people making tea and coffee, whether that's female or male. That's not, you know, I don't want to be sexist here, but so, you know, find things for unskilled ladies to do on site that doesn't put them in danger. All right, that's important. Don't put anybody in danger. But yeah, Larry, no, you can't. No, okay.
So just traditionally, you don't see a lot of females working in sites in Micronesia, and there's reasons for that. Are you guys going to be looking for 30% of our staff to be female? So if we open it up and we hire and we don't specify a gender,
but we just hire the people that show up, and we're not discriminating against them, that's fine.
Yes. Discrimination is key.
Peter, you wanted to answer that?
Yeah, it's equal opportunity at the end of the day. I completely hear what you're saying. It's not just Micronesia, it's all around the Pacific Islands. The cultural side of it is very important, and the funders recognise that too. They work in this environment as well too. But Dave's raised another good point. Females are actually better at detailed tasks requiring attention to detail. So think administratively and, what can be done around the office, the hygiene, cleaning, etc., whatever. There's a few examples that where they don't need to be out on site doing laborious work. Some cultures are quite cool with that, on the other hand, but completely hear what you're saying. So yes, work within the environment that it is at the end of the day.
Yeah, nobody's going to police you on that, but it's something which we encourage you to look at and put in. Say that you're going to try, but it's equal opportunities.
The 30% thing too. Look, demonstrating that you've tried. Yeah, at the end of the day is important. If it is written as 30%, usually it is as a target. So you aim for it. You try. You really try. You demonstrate that you've tried. If you haven't been able to do it for whatever reason, it's all documented.
It's like the speed limit in Harley-Davidson riders, I mean, really the speed limit is there so that Harley-Davidson riders can try and reach that speed limit. It's not prescriptive. So, all right, sorry, I own a BMW. Try to hire 30%, buy provisions, water, food, etc. from local suppliers, supporting local traders. Don't bring everything in because it's a lot cheaper. On the bigger things, yes, but try and support the local guys. If you have a large number of workers and need a workers' camp, consider renting local accommodation, as Peter and Dave have said. And then sanitation and everything's already provided. Because if you set up your own camp, you're going to have to tell us how you're going to deal with the sanitation, how you're going to deal with potable water. You can't just get them to go down to the river and wash, so it becomes a headache. Do not allow drugs or alcohol on site. And if necessary, separate brought-in workers from local communities. So if you are going to hire a lot of international laborers, separate them from local communities. Okay. Any other questions on labor? Because it is a difficult situation.
Primarily, the focus on the 30% females that you guys are trying to introduce here is to kind of present equal opportunity, right? Not a problem.
No, definitely, it's a target, and it's difficult to reach that target. We get that, we understand. Okay, this has come up a few times. You obviously have EPA regulations in place that cover this. Depending where you are, you might not be able to comply with EPA regulations. So you're going to have to make sure that you do the best that you can and you come up with a solution before you apply it that gets signed off by the supervision consultant, and we can assist with agreeing that. But if possible, refuel all site vehicles at gas stations and try and avoid storage on site, if possible. But if it is kept in skid-mounted tanks on site, they must be placed on a hard base with containment around them. So if you are going to put skid-mounted on site, allow for that as part of your site establishment, to throw a concrete base where you're going to put it, and just think about your site operation. Allow for that. Those things aren't cheap. And any hazardous materials such as lubricants, paints, solvents, etc. must be kept in sealed storage areas, and gas cylinders must be kept in locked storage out of direct sunlight and chained upright. All right, there's 3 examples. But like I said, you probably have EPA regulation that will need to be followed as well. Remember, everything that you do, sorry, let me just reiterate this because it's not really 100% clear. Everything that you do does need to conform to the local law. Forget the custom and practice, that's really, really important. But legally, don't do something that we approve only for us all to find out that what you've done is illegal. All right, like brought in 20 laborers that aren't actually allowed to be in country. Okay, come up with a fantastic solution for storage that doesn't fulfill the EPA regulation. That sort of thing. Just be aware of that. And again, that's why it's so important that there is local content in these bids and on these projects. If there's any internationals out there, it would be good to have subcontracting staff from local to assist on these bids to cover this sort of thing that only you guys know. Barry?
however it's done, you need to explain how it's done and how you're controlling risks. That's just pretty simple with that.
We're kind of relying on you guys to make that judgment call. Yeah. Again, before it comes, let us know, because we're going to have a full-time environmental health and safety officer, as well as a materials and quality officer on every site. So not only if it's in violation of something that they feel uncomfortable with on the health and safety side, but you might find the materials guy goes, well, sure, you're dumping your selected materials over there on the ground, but where you're dumping it is mushy and soggy, and now when you pull it out of there, you're going to have to walk away from the bottom 2 feet because it's contaminated. So then your materials, the quality of materials guy is going to go, you can't use that, sorry, it's contaminated, and you're going to lose money. All right.
Have a think about your disestablishment as well, your demobilisation. What are you going to do with after these things? Maybe it's better to use paving stones, for example, that can easily be removed afterwards, and say, you know, committing with reinforced concrete. Yeah. So think through those things. Talk about what you're going to do.
Yeah. Okay, toolbox briefings. Whole toolbox briefings. All right. So maintain a good health and safety record, and it requires constant repetition. As we all know, you say it today. It works for a week, it slows down, and by the end of the following week, I mean, okay, a stupid example is Transport for London, all right? They never had toolbox briefings, and we got involved at one stage in assisting them with their asset register and their asset tracking management systems. And what they were finding was that whenever the guys would go down underground and they would do some work on the tracks, they would leave tools behind, and it was costing them literally millions and millions of pounds every year. So we instituted the DOT system, so in the evenings they would just, when the guys came back, it would track exactly what tools were missing every evening and every time they came into the yard. And that, we realized that it wasn't so much people stealing tools, it was people just leaving stuff behind, okay? And just giving them that continuous repetition cut all of that down. So it wasn't a case of punishing them, it was a case of educating them. That's what toolbox briefings are. It's a regular education of good practice on site, okay? So I mean, just that alone saved Transport for London several million pounds every year. And every morning at roll call, hold a 1-minute safety briefing. Guys, this is why you need to use your hard hats, even though it's hot out there. You know, please don't let us catch you without your hard hats on. Choose one topic, just one, each day. And one day safety boots, the next day wearing goggles, especially when they're swimming, sorry. Keep reminding them, keep a record, all right? Important. What happens every month is you get assessed as a contractor every month. You hand in your monthlies, there's an environmental section, there's a social section, and we read those monthly reports, and if you can show us that if you could put in there, here's a minuted set of meetings, this is what we covered on, you know, this week, this is what we covered the next week. Everything you record and you put in there just makes the whole contract go so much smoother, so much easier. Okay, so keep reminding them and keep a record of everything that you do. Okay. Incidents and near misses. Keep a record of incidents and near misses. Incidents are occasions when time is lost or a worker is injured and requires medical treatment. Okay, near misses are occasions when a potential incident was spotted and quick action by a worker avoided it. Of course, it's hard to get workers and supervisors to admit that anything could have gone wrong, but encourage them, give them rewards. Don't tell them, you know, if you tell me your mate, if you snitch on your mate, you're going to get $100 and he's going to get fired. That's not the point. Give people rewards for safety. Safety on site is so important, okay? And the target is 0 incidents, several near misses. All right, does that make sense? You guys get that, right? Because if we've got 10 near misses being reported and no incidents on site, we know that the site is actually working. If we have nothing being reported, then you're probably going to ask for delay claims at the end. Okay, because the only site where there's no near misses is an inactive one. Okay, so a report of 0 near misses on a construction site is not believable. All right? Again, create a register, make it easy for these guys. Nowadays with electronics, you can even set up a central one-way WhatsApp group. When a guy sees a near miss, he can drop a text, bam, done. It's logged, it's there. Or at the end of the day, he can go and write it down, but he's tired, he's not going to do that. Make it easy for them, use electronics. It does make everybody's life easier. Everybody has a cell phone these days. You know, doesn't matter what their income stream. All right, near misses and incidents. The more you have recorded, the better your site is going to run. And then you bring that into your toolbox talks and your safety talks every month, every morning, okay? Okay, gender equality and social inclusivity. Ensure men and women are paid equally for the same tasks, all right? So if you've got a bloke doing the cleaning of a space and you've got a lady doing the cleaning of a space and they are both employed to clean, they should both get the same wage. Just because it's just because it's a bloke doesn't mean he should earn less. Okay? So, right. Provide separate sanitary and hygiene facilities for men and women. You only got 3 women on site and 150 men, she needs her own toilet, guys. All right? If you're going to be providing spaces for people to shower and change, especially in high hazardous areas where they're going to get dirty, like with asphalt and so on, provide separate showers for the ladies, okay? And if you've got 100 guys working and 2 ladies working, you only need 1 for the ladies and you need 10 for the guys, but there should be a ladies section, and not just with a curtain. Consider reducing working hours for female employees if they're requested to handle domestic duties. Now, it's difficult because of the first point, all right? And we have that in the aviation industry a lot, okay, where for certain reasons, women aren't allowed to fly at certain times of the month, okay? It's just not legal. But they're not allowed to get a lower wage, okay? So you're going to have to figure out how you work that one. Just think tennis. I don't know if any of you watch tennis, but the ladies play half the amount of time that the men play, and they get paid the same money, all right? So think about it. But consider reducing working hours for female employees if they request to handle domestic duties. Give special attention if workers are breadwinners in female-headed households. All right, moving on. Consider employing persons with physical disabilities if the tasks will allow this. And again, administration. You know, admin is fantastic. So if somebody can't walk, it doesn't mean that they can't use a computer, doesn't mean that they can't run a set of books. They might be your biggest asset at the end of the day because nobody else gave them an opportunity, all right? I mean, look at me. I run teams of people from Portugal. I mean, you know, I don't need to walk. It's possible. It's actually possible nowadays with technology to do so much more. All right, okay. I've got a question. Peter, is this policed? This. So my question is, are we going, is there a policing aspect to this? Do they have to declare what they're paying every single staff member? Do we then get that full list and we go, is this policed? Like, why are all the women on this list earning 20% less than the men on this list?
100% on the sanitation separation, absolutely.
Yeah.
On the payment of wages, I'm not sure. Dave, can you just chime in on that one, please? If you can just send us a message. And just while I'm waiting for Dave to, hey, yes, emphatic, yes, it is policed.
Okay, so it's policed, all right?
Yeah.
So, so just make sure you do it.
Yeah. Dave's just given another, going back to near misses, he's given a really good example of a classic one he's seen a lot. Access to fire extinguishers just being blocked by debris, all right?
Yeah.
Someone just moving it out of the way. They're
Yeah.
getting rid of something. That is a near miss.
Yeah.
Report it.
Okay.
Someone's paid attention to it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not easy to go and get that fire extinguisher. There's chairs or a ladder blocking it.
Yeah.
Someone's realised that, they've moved it, and they've made it possible to get access to that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's true.
So think that way.
Yeah. Okay, good. So that answers that one. So yeah, it's important. Remember, all of these things, if you don't do them, they end up in CRAs. That's correct, huh? That's the term. It's a CRA, isn't it, where we issue them with a CRA? Corrective response, CAO. Corrective action request, yeah. So a CAR, yeah. And we'll get onto that in a moment. They can get quite serious. Here they are. Didn't expect them that quickly. So if you have infringed the contractor's environmental and social mitigation plan is spotted or occurs, you may receive the following. You could get a verbal warning from the consulting, the supervision consultant, and you are expected to take remedial action at once. You could get a written notification within 24 hours from the resident engineer or the contractor's supervision consultant. You are expected to reply promptly as soon as reasonably possible. Okay? And a corrective action report, that CAR, this will detail the incident, state required response, and say whether this has been carried out or not. This will be raised at the monthly progress meetings. It is expected that corrective action will have been taken promptly, or if not, a reasonable explanation has been provided. Okay? If you do not respond to a corrective action report, and this does happen, so generally, and we see this all the time, I mean, we were talking about it last night, you know, contractors just ignore it. Kind of go, it's not important, okay, they just ignore it. Well, it can, the consulting, supervising consultant has the right to suspend works and claim liquidated damages on site. The corrective action reports are really, really important. Okay, they will be issued. If you're not going to take the corrective action, you know, it doesn't need to go there, because nobody's going to send you a corrective action report. They're going to send you a written notification, or they're going to tell you verbally, we've seen this, please correct it. And they're going to write to you and say, we've seen this, please correct it. You're only going to get a CAR, which is an official document, if you're not actually taking action. And if you get 2 or 3 of those, site will be suspended. All right? And you can't claim delays because the site has been suspended.
It's okay to have cars, and we generally put them into minor and major. Obviously the major, there's a good reason behind it, cause and effect, and you need to deal with it quicker. But it's part of the routine reporting during the supervision stage, when it was raised, when it was closed out, how it gone, etc. So the expectation on the contractor is just to be managing it properly. All right. The thing where it goes pear-shaped and suspension of works comes in as if it's just continually ignoring, or applying inappropriate mitigation measures, and you know, it just snowballs. So it's an extreme, but that's the recourse and that's the end result when it gets there. It's to underscore the most important point that these are not to be taken lightly. They need to be properly addressed.
Thanks, Peter. Okay. Oh, sorry.
Hired or nominated who your consultant or who your safety company or organization is going to be on the ground?
It will be SMEC anyway.
It's us.
Whether it's sub-consultants of our company or not, they will ultimately be under our company.
Kind of how we're structuring it is we've got a full team for each site. We've got a full team for each state, and that team comprises an environmental health and safety officer, as well as a materials quality engineer, as well as the senior RE, and there will be junior REs on site, and works supervisors as well. So there'll be a team of consultants permanently established on site. We're not going to parachute in. We will be on site 24/7 and available, open. You know, there'll be an administrative person there all the time as well. It's difficult to find people. You know, to give you names, it's so hard, even for us, to just find names that we, you know, because bringing internationals in is expensive, and it's difficult for the internationals to live here for 2 years while you're building a contract. So yeah.
Just coming back to the gender equity thing, just reading what David said on this. It's a classic example with gender equity, equality. Women are getting $6 men are getting $8. Why? Because the women are working 6 hours per day, whereas the men are working 8. Why? Women have asked for this 2 hours off so that they can go and take care of their kids with getting them to and from school. Overall, that's not an issue, right? The women are happy with that, the families are happy with that, the men are they're just getting paid those couple of extra dollars because they're working long hours.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
It did. He's gone on to say here, this is the problem with doing it over text, and I'm not speaking for himself. It looked bad to the Asian Development Bank.
Okay. Yeah.
Because there is a disparity in how much more, but with a justification, when it's explained why that was happening, they accepted it. It made sense.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Thanks, Dave. Okay. On completion, you got to clean up. All right. Remove all the debris, the empty oil cans, the sharp wire, the paper, the plastic bags, things that animals can choke on. Fill in any empty borrow areas that you may have filled with water that children can fall into and drown. I think I read that wrong. I think you mustn't fill them with water. All right? So fill in any empty borrow areas that you may have filled with water. All right? Fill them in with soil. Okay. If you have rented any land for workers' camps, batching plants, or lay-down areas, return them to the owner in the same condition as when you got them, or better. A project completion report will be prepared by the supervising consultant, and if you don't make good, any residuals can result in a possible loss of the performance guarantee. Okay, so just be aware of that there are consequences to just walking away from a site. Right, here is an environmental and social management and monitoring plan table. You can take a look at this when you get the slides. You'll see there's the project activity, the environmental impacts that project activity has, and then the management and mitigation. What is your mitigation measures? Your institutional responsibility. Who's responsible for those mitigation measures and who carries those costs? The parameters, all right? What are you basing that mitigation measure on? How often do you have to do this and verify that it is being done? And the institutional responsibility. Who's checking that it has been done? Okay, so if you look at the last one, updating of the environmental mitigation plan, bid and contract documentation, bid evaluation, all right, project activity. Environmentally responsible procurement and compliance with the CSS, mitigation measures. Update the EMP and develop consent conditions included in bid documents, develop an environmental, what is it, EAS? One of those, all right, and development. I think you get that. You get the gist, all right. So this is the structure. You want to put a table together like this and look at project activity, environmental impacts, and I'm going to say safeguards. I think there should be environmental impacts as well as social impacts. This is how you monitor it. This is the mitigation measures. This is who's responsible for doing it. In this case, at the bottom is a contractor. Who's going to carry those costs? Contractor, all right, and the parameters. How are you applying it? How often are you applying it? And whose responsibility is it to oversee that you are applying it? Okay. This should be a table that forms the basis of your ongoing monthly contractual obligations. So just keep it current, keep it current. As things come up, you add to it. Remember, the contractor's environmental and social mitigation plan, or contract management plan, is the contractor's. It is what it says it is. All right? We're not going to do it for you. We're not going to run it for you. We're going to make sure you do it. We're going to make sure you run it. All right? And we'll give you input. So if you want to change it up, but record it. Everything must be recorded. Really, really important. Keep records. They will protect you guys against false accusations later on. And it's a good environmental health and safety record at the end of the project, which will then immediately give you a leg up on the next lot of bids, because people will go, these guys really applied it well. The community was happy. And look, when you go back there, it looks fantastic. The road is neat, clean, and where you don't even know where the construction yard was. All right? And remember, it's your CESMP. You can change it anytime you want and as many times as you want throughout the project. We've allowed for 18 times. in a 2-year project, all right? That's a lot. And you'll see a table like this in the environmental social management plan. Use it as a guide. Make your contractor's environmental social mitigation plan simple. All right, make it site specific. Keep it short and simple. Okay, folk, you'll be very happy to know the next slide is conclusion. It's bid stage, and it only requires an outline. So coming back to the very first part of this whole conversation and what we've gone through here, these are the things you should be thinking about when you put together the outline document, and you put a title, you put a heading, and you put a one-liner. We've thought about the trash, we're going to take care of it. All right, we've thought about our fuel, we're going to make sure it reaches EPA standards where we're going to be putting our fuel, and we've thought about it, okay? It's an outline. How you do it on site, that's going to be developed on site if you win the bid. So, all right, you must understand the concepts to be applied on site, and the stronger your technical approach and subsequent score. So if you demonstrate strongly that you understand it, it's going to come through in your technical approach and you're going to score better. Allow in your price for monthly updates. You'll be audited regularly, and this is one area you can be dismissed off-site for regardless of your performance. So allow time for this item in your bid. And no works can begin on site until your management plan has been approved. If you win the bid and you have put in your bid a management plan that you've paid somebody from Australia to do for you, and it looks fantastic, you're going to have to do it. All right? So don't do that either, okay? Don't go and put a management plan in that, or a CESMP that is just out of this world that wins you the bid, and then you find on site that it's costing you more money than building the road. Okay? Like you promised to give the community lunch every day. Just don't do that, okay? It must be a practical document that you know you can roll out when you get the job. Okay, I'm done. Thank you very much. What's next? I think I'm going to throw it to the floor to ask if anybody has questions and if there's anything else you want to cover. We are pretty much done with the workshop on the training side. We have a huge amount of information sitting here between the three of us, up here and on the computer, and we know where to find it. So I'm very happy to stay an hour or so. If there's stuff that you want to grill us on, I think that's only fair to you guys, especially since you've been faithful in coming out here each day. It's just been fantastic. We really appreciate that, because, yeah, we really do. So I'm going to ask if you, I think we should break for half an hour, or maybe if we can get lunch early, that would be good. And I'm going to ask if there is anything now that you can think of that we should come back for to cover, and then I can prepare a little bit before we come back. Is there anything you guys want to cover specific? Larry?
We have a meeting this afternoon with TCI, and I expect that at that moment we'll decide to take them off and put the notice on. And then within 2 weeks, the new documents will be put up with a notice and necessary addenda. And everybody that we know has been involved in the bidding process will be informed. But we don't know everybody who has this information.
Think of it this way, you're still bidding for the same thing. It's just there's going to be details in the documentation that are changing in the way the information is going to be released and controlled. The bid period has not stopped, all right? It's not saying that you need to pause either, all right, just because they've been taken down. Keep using the information that you've got already and continue on with your preparation. This is to inform you that things will come out, and then when you see them, everyone will get it at the same time, and there'll be an associated time extension to acknowledge this as well. We're making everything available, right, on the site. Yeah, so we do have a bit of a collection that we need to go through, and
I think we're going to definitely allow for all of these slides, all of these presentations to be put onto that web page somehow between the next day or two. So, Sergey?
Yeah. So on the big documents, you can still download them, but be aware that they will change.
On the presentations, I agree we can just put them online and keep them online. We will need to talk to Kenneth, but I expect that we will just do a separate link to those presentations. That will probably open a Google Drive and the different presentations will be there. And the videos of this whole training can be accessed through the existing link that's already there.
Yeah, the target at the moment is 13th of June. So it's a month later. The target for replacing the bidding documents is the 22nd. So if you've got copies of the bid documents, you can start working on them now because it's not going to fundamentally change. 22nd, there will be some of those changes. It basically means that we have got an official 2-week delay period that we've introduced, and which effectively gives it a 2-week extension over and above what we had before. So yeah, for the target is going to be
Martin, so the presentations from day one, right?
Yeah, from day one, all the YouTube videos are there under that link. They will stay there. I don't know how long they stay. I think it's YouTube, so I think it's there.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I've got my family all sitting with popcorn at home watching, so it's fantastic. Yeah, well, they're mostly asleep. But
yeah, day 1 and 2 are already up there. Just looking at it right now, this live one's still obviously going, but once it's finished, it'll imagine it's just there straight away, available in real time.
Okay.
So, to be frank, like for example in SRIIP, you're establishing a stockyard and you're establishing an asphalt plant. It's going to take a little bit of doing to figure out where you're going to place it and what it's going to cost and transportation of all of that. I find 15th of June to be very short time. And, I mean, you're talking about 4 different states.
We get it. We get it. We've been working here for 2 years. We do get it. We've spoken to the guys at ADB. A lot of people don't get it. Okay. So I think bid documents are going to come back up online in 2 weeks today. That will then open up the opportunity for requests for information and comments. And it's at that point that you will write in, and there will be a set period where you'll be able to write in and ask for an extension of time. And I think if enough people are asking for that extension of time, it will be granted. I'm not promising that, all right? And remember my caveat from Friday, everything that I say cannot be held against me in a court of law, all right? But I do believe that it's fair, because it is not easy. It is not easy out here arranging transportation, and especially with batch plants and all the rest of it. So I get it. I will throw my weight behind that as on the consultant side, but that will be something which will have to be agreed to by DTCI, and will then change on the webpage. But yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, this reality too with the timeline to do this bid. I mean, we're in the same boat as a consultancy. We can't crystal ball gaze everything that's going to happen and have full clarity before we start a job. So there is that element of risk that all bidders are going to have to take at some stage. I mean, think about the principle. Well, we know we need to get an asphalt plant there. Surely it's possible to get one there and find that bit of land and go through the motions and get it all sorted out. So I think you've got to look at it a bit that way. I just wanted to make an important point too about information that can be relied upon. So the supplementary information that's in the bid documents, that is provided as background information. It's very useful, obviously, to all bidders because it's related to the project that you're putting in a bid for, but it is non-binding. You have to do your own due diligence as well, all right? It's provided there for information purposes only. It will not form part of the contract that you sign if you're successful in securing a bid.
I know. I mean, just try to get
any information out of Humboldt. Nightmare, absolute nightmare. No, I seriously, I've been trying to get information on testing equipment. I mean, the FDR, trying to get that in. I get it. So, like I said, as consultants, we understand that frustration. There is also the aspect of when is the finance actually going to be released? You know, so we need to have that conversation and go, well, is it really? You know, we got to work backwards from there because there is going to be a 2 to 3 month assessment period because there's going to be a lot of bids coming in with a lot of civil works packages, and it's not just one project, it's 5. You know, and now we're changing that up. It's 5 packages with sublots. There's a lot happening here, and ourselves together with DTCI, together with independents, have to assess that. That takes time as well. So we need to work it back from when the financing happens. There is our limit. Because if the financing doesn't happen at a certain time, it gets lost, and then the whole project just gets shelved. So there are checks and balances, there are limits that we can't go beyond, but at the same time, we'll work it back from there, and then we're going to give you the maximum that we possibly can. And yeah, as soon as it comes live again, let's get some requests in for extension, and then we can tackle it that way. We could say, this is the limit cutoff date, this is how long it's going to take us to assess. This would be the maximum that we could possibly give you. And then we can knock on DTCI's door and say, this is how we've calculated it, let's give them till that date. So again, we're going to do everything we can to make it achievable. I mean, I think it is probably the first time in the region, and I know ADB and World Bank have said it's the first time in the region that they're actually seeing this merit point criteria, the different aspects of what we are investing into that, you know, the CPI indexes that we're trying to look at. There's a lot happening here that is good. It's good not only for Micronesia, it's good for the region. So there's fresh things, and I think our team, as well as ADB's team, are incredibly flexible. They're fantastic. We as a team, we are committed to making it work, making it happen, and trying to build the capacity, which really is a big one for the region. So yeah, we'll do everything we can to make that a reality. Yes, sir.
How do we roll it? And when do we come in, or how do we know because all the contractors are submitting their CESMP document. What about the subcontractors?
No.
No.
Trainings?
The contractor is responsible for submitting an outline CESMP as part of their bid. The subcontractor is not. Accept information to the main contractor, who will include that in his bid. So you, as PTA, if you are a subcontractor for one or more bidders, you do not have to provide any CESMP, but you will, of course, have to provide inputs to the contractor so that the contractor can prepare his costing, can prepare his outline CESMP and his technical proposal.
That probably,
It brings up a concern because, so we put forward a CMP that's approved, and then if they're
a sole source subcontractor and they see, or they come back and say, look, we didn't price to comply with that, and they raise their prices, then what does the contractor do?
I'd suggest you talk to them first when you're putting your CSMP together.
Talk to them. I mean, in the end, PTAs will be a subcontractor, just like any other subcontractor. If the subcontractor tells you, these are my prices, and then after contract award he changes his prices, that's not going to work either. You need agreements, and you need agreements on the pricing, but you also need agreements on the CESMP. That, for instance, I've seen you discussing with PTA, so I expect that you would look to have PTA as a subcontractor. You need to agree with PTA. For certain parts of the CESMP, PTA will be responsible for implementing those. So you need to agree, this is what you will do.
and they need to include that in their pricing to you as a subcontractor. And the same with any other subcontractor.
My advice is make them part of any withholding amounts, the 10% at the end of the defects liability period, the performance guarantees. You know, make it financial. Subcontractors only understand financial, all right? No, seriously. So when the contract is finished, there's 5% on the table that they're not going to get back if they don't clean up their section, all right? I think it's fair. I mean, you know.
Especially make it clear. Make it clear in your agreement with the subcontractor exactly what that subcontractor will do, what they will be paid, what penalties will be applied, or if any. Because in the end, the bids, we're looking at the bidders. So the single entity or joint venture partners, that is what we're looking at. And we will look at a subcontractor in terms of what they're bringing in capacity and in equipment. But we're not going to evaluate them in detail. That is your job as the bidder, to make sure that that works properly.
There's probably a wrap on. Do you want to say some concluding remarks there?
All right, so then that's, thank you. Okay, I really want to just say thank you very much to Asian Development Bank at this point. I know they haven't been here because it's been a training workshop, but I also know that Asian Development Bank has been hugely involved in putting this together. They have been watching everything on telly with the popcorn, all right? But really, this is, as a result, we're here as a result of the support financially that Asian Development Bank has given to Micronesia, but also the support that Asian Development Bank and its team has given to us as consultants throughout the process to get the process streamlined and to get it approved. There is just so much paperwork, you have no idea. it's you know, I wish it was just a CESMP. And Asian Development Bank has really come to the party. Guys like Tanela and Malika, you know, Ganiga, I mean, they've just been fantastic. So right now, I want to say thank you very much to Asian Development Bank. I also want to say thank you very much to all the government officials that have taken part in the discussions that we've had. You know, from DTCI all the way through to the governor. PTA has assisted with rates and trying to get together the, you know, cost estimates so that we can get an idea of what projects we can realistically look at rolling out within the budgets and within the timelines. Obviously, I want to say thank you to SMEC and the team from PCS. You know, PCS's support on the consultations. When you talk about Chuk, you know, immediately I think Andy. When you talk about Kozrai, immediately I think Chrissy. When you talk about Yap, immediately there's Debbie. You know, when you talk about Pompey, you know, there's Mark and there's and Olivia and Kritika. It's just been a really good team effort. You know, so I want to say thank you very much to our associates here in country, and to SMEC, the international SMEC community. But at the end of the day, when this project rolls out, it's going to be you guys that build it. And for this workshop to have been a success, and I think it has been a success, and we've seen changes to documentation that is going to go forward as a precedent in years to come, I want to say a big thank you to you guys for coming. You know, the inputs that everybody has had here, as well as those internationally, have made a difference to the process, to the point where we're having to pull it for 2 weeks and change things up so that it's suitable. So all of these inputs have been hugely appreciated. So as consultants, we just want to say a big thank you to yourselves. Not sure if I missed anybody else, Peter.
No, you did a very thorough job there. Just to say good luck to everyone in preparing their bids. We look forward to receiving some good proposals. Please make sure that the documentation is tight and that checks upon checks are done. Don't make a silly little mistake and leave something out and run the risk of being disqualified. over something that can easily be avoided. So really put the time and attention into it. Thanks everyone for your time, and we look forward to receiving some competitive bids.
Great, thank you. Lunch is served. Yes, Carol.
One more thing. Your last slide, you talked about audit. Are you referring to financial statement audits or performance audit of the projects, or
Which slide?
the very last one?
This probably safeguards auditing.
It's going to be safeguards because all of this was about safeguards. Updates. Okay, you'll be audited regularly. Okay, sorry, that's a term that means that it is official. All right, so it's not financial audits. Okay, nobody's going to audit you financially. You can, sort out how you put your slips in.
It's a routine thing. What we look for is auditing environmental, social, and occupational health and safety compliance. That's what it is. So a member of the engineers team, SMEC, will come along and be looking at exactly those kind of things. They'll have a checklist to guide them. It's not done in isolation from the contractors team. It's all done together. Yeah.
And we get audited as well. So the supervision consultant also gets audited. Yeah. So does that answer that one? Okay. Richard.
240 days to award it.
That is correct. Yeah.
We've given up to, primarily because there is still several processes that need to go through Asian Development Bank. You have no idea how quickly this whole process of getting this bid online has happened. I mean, like we said, the urgent climate resilience project that's happening through World Bank is still out there. All right. So the 240 days is to ensure that we have sufficient time, that all the paperwork is in place, because what we don't want is to award the contract, everybody's ready to start and ready to go, and we don't have the finances ready to release. We've got to have that in place. Sergey.
The 240 days is really you need to see that as the extreme. What we don't want to do is that we have a bidding process and something comes up and we need to ask for an extension of the bid validity, because that just makes everything complicated. So the 240 days is incorporating all kinds of things that could happen. I'm expecting that hopefully we can get to contract award in half that time. But we can't foresee all the things that might happen. But we will definitely need time for the bid evaluation. That will take a couple of months, and hopefully then you can move on quite quickly to contract award. But the 240 is really the extreme. That's what the bid validity is for, so that within that period we are almost 100% certain that we can get to contract award.
We done? Did that answer your question, Richard? Is that all right? Okay, great. Okay, this one's it. Ah, I knew it. I knew it. No, we're done. We're done for today. We're done for the workshop. I've thanked everybody. Thank you very much. There is an after party this evening at your house. Yeah.
That's a wrap.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for your time. Yeah, we're done.
So with regards to the questions, can we, there's a 2-week delay?
You can continue sending questions.
We just need to change up your billing documents, Richard. That's all.